Okay, so in this video, we'll finish talking about some glands and we'll talk a little bit about how tissues talk to each other, how they change, how they grow, etc. So, glands are secreting substances for elimination or secreting substances for within the body. So, two types we have exocrine or endocrine. So, exocrine glands are connected to the surface with a duct, and endocrine glands do not use ducts, they secrete directly into the bloodstream. We have different types of glands based on what they're producing. So serous glands produce something called serous fluid, which is a really thin, watery secretion. And then mucus glands secrete something called mucin. Mucin binds to water, and then that is what creates mucus, that gross, sticky stuff. Mixed glands secrete both serous and mucus fluids. Glands can also be classified based on the method that they secrete things. So holocrine glands disintegrate entirely in order to deliver their materials. So for example, the oil glands in your scalp. Merocrine glands secrete via exocytosis. Apocrine glands are similar to merocrine glands. They used to think part of the cytoplasm is lost, but the research is kind of up on that. So these are like sweat glands. And then cytogenic glands are the ones releasing sperm and egg cells. So this video, I think, will play if you go into the PowerPoint. So holocrine glands are disintegrating entirely. Merocrine glands are secreting via exocytosis. Apocrine glands may or may not take part of the cytosol with them. So mucous membranes are lining anything that comes into contact with the outside environment. So these line your nose, your mouth, your whole digestive tract, your whole urinary tract, your whole reproductive tract. And the goal here is they secrete that mucin, which combines with water to make mucus, and mucus traps any bacteria or other foreign particles and pushes them out of the body. So cells need to be able to communicate with each other, and they do this through these cell junctions. So there are three types that we'll go through. The first type is called desmosomes. So these are kind of like spot rivets that you have on the back of your jeans, those little things that hold the fabric together. So it holds the two cells together, but they're not directly touching. And in order to pass materials from one cell to the other, it has to follow the normal process of diffusion. But this is really nice because these are linked here with filaments that allow for stretching. So these two cells can stretch pretty far apart from each other, but they're still linked together. Tight junctions are like sutured together. They have these little kiss sites here where they're held together. Same kind of idea. This is not a passageway for materials. If the cells need to send things from one to the other, they still need to use diffusion. These allow for pretty selective barriers so that things don't pass through really easily. Here's a microscope picture of them. And then the final type are called gap junctions. So these are little holes in the cells that allow for the passageway of ions and other small molecules. So these are also sometimes called communicating junctions. things can actually pass between the two cells. They don't need to go through diffusion. So this is easier for cells to communicate with each other. So you might see this in muscles because they need to all act all at once. Tissues can change in a few different ways. So the first type is called differentiation, and this is what we see in embryonic development. So we start with some type of unspecialized tissue, and then it turns into a specialized mature tissue. So it starts as mesenchyme, unspecialized, then it will turn into, for example, muscular tissue. Metaplasia is changing from one type of mature tissue to another, and this happens like in puberty in the vagina. This simple cuboidal tissue turns into stratified squamous. Tissue can also grow. So hyperplasia is cell multiplication. Hypertrophy is enlargement of cells. So not an increase in number, but just increase in size. Neoplasia is growth of new tissue. So this is tumor, and this is abnormal. Tissue can shrink or die. Sometimes this is normal, sometimes this is pathological. So atrophy is shrinking in size or number. So this is the opposite of hyperplasia or hypertrophy. Necrosis is pathological death. So this is tissue death for some type of reason that was not planned for. This causes inflammation and can damage other tissue around it. Apoptosis is programmed cell death. So this is normal and healthy, not pathological. So for example, in fetal development, we used to have webbing between our fingers, and then at some point, the webbing is programmed to die, so that tissue dies that was holding all your fingers together, then you don't have webbing between your fingers. That's normal, it's healthy, it's part of life. Okay? So I will leave you with this, and then on the next video, we'll start talking about integumentary.